What's up guys, my name is Ace, and welcome back to another gun guide. This is the series where I go into great detail with all of the stats as well as some excellent attachment combinations for every gun in Modern Warfare 3. And in today's episode, we're going to be covering the brand new assault rifle that was just added with Season 1. This is the RAM-7. And starting it off as always, let's get into our damage profile, and with this gun, it's generally going to be a 5 to 6 shot kill. And it's worth noting the bonus zone, where you deal a little bit extra damage, applies anywhere in the torso as well as anywhere in the arms. As for headshots, we also get headshot damage to the neck with this gun, and in the maximum damage range, you only need one single headshot mixed in with those torso shots in order to reduce this to a 4-shot kill. So it's definitely in your best interest to try to make sure you're landing that head or neck shot. But then let's get into our rate of fire, which is 750 rounds per minute. And what this means is our 5-shot time to kill potential is 320 milliseconds. Now, this isn't an amazing time to kill by any means for an assault rifle up close. It's a little bit on the slower side. However, the moment you mix that one single headshot in, it now cuts this down to 240 milliseconds, which is extremely competitive in this game. Next, let's have a look at our range values, and as you can see here, our maximum damage range is really good for an assault rifle at 33 meters. And our 5-shot kill potential carries out to about 44 meters, which is not bad at all. I would actually say the RAM-7 excels in the range department. Additionally, our bullet velocity is excellent at 780 meters per second. This is the fastest in the assault rifle category. And then let's take a look at our hardcore ranges. As we can see here, we have a guaranteed 1-shot kill potential in that maximum damage range, so up to 33 meters. Then from 33 to 44 meters, this is where we still can get a 1-shot kill to the body, but if you hit them in the legs, you will get a hit marker and it'll take a 2nd shot to kill. And it's also worth noting that this is a 1-shot kill to the head or neck at any range. So not a bad choice at all for hardcore game modes. After that, let's move into our hipfire stats, and while standing still, we've just got standard hipfire for assault rifles. However, when we're moving, we do have a pretty bad hipfire spread. It is below average at 7.7 degrees per second. And now let's take a look at our recoil, which is, I would say, the big downside with the RAM-7. Without attachments, it can be a little difficult to control, especially if you're trying to stretch that range out a little bit. Personally, I like focusing heavily on improving in the horizontal recoil department with this, because it does have the tendency to jump pretty drastically after the first few shots fired. It will cut pretty hard and it'll kind of zigzag on you, and you want to get rid of that as much as possible. But in saying that, you also don't want to completely discount the vertical recoil, because with those initial shots fired, you can see there's a pretty noticeable gap between each of those shots. So it is often worth considering that vertical recoil control as well. And when you combine the fact that both of those areas could use some work, recoil is the big stat that really tends to hold the RAM-7 back, and this is where you generally want to focus your attachment choices on. As for handling, we've got a pretty standard aim down sight time at 240 milliseconds, and our sprint to fire time is a little bit better than average for assault rifles at 189 milliseconds. Then taking a look at our reload add time, this is within the realm of average, I would say, for assault rifles at 1.55 seconds. Now finally, for the base stats of the RAM-7, let's get into our mobility stats. And there's really nothing out of the ordinary here when it comes to your mobility stats. It's pretty much just standard for an assault rifle. So there we go, that covers it for all of the base stats of the RAM-7. Now let's get into some excellent attachment combinations I've got for you guys. And the first build I've got is my RAM-7 accuracy build. This one actually turned out quite nice. So for our muzzle, we're using the Komodo Heavy because this stacks really heavily in the horizontal recoil department. We've got the XRK Core Mark 40 barrel. This one's going to be helping nicely with our range, our bullet velocity, and a little bit in the recoil area as well. We've got the Mark III reflector optic on there. That's just my preference, but I do like having an optic for a setup like this since I am going to be using it at slightly longer ranges. We have the HVS 3.4 pad in the stock section, and this one helps very nicely with recoil. I actually quite like this attachment for the RAM-7. And then finally, we're going to wrap this up with the Retort 90 grip tape. And when you combine all of these together, we get a very nicely improved recoil pattern. It kicks almost straight up with a little bit of a lean to the right, but it's a nice straight line. There isn't too much of a zigzag in there, unlike the base recoil plots, and that's primarily due to that Komodo Heavy muzzle. It is worth noting there's still a little bit of a climb on those initial shots, and you have to be aware of some of those gaps between those bullet holes, because that is something you will have to just compensate for with your gameplay. But generally speaking, you can be quite accurate with this particular setup. We're also not sacrificing too much in the aim down sight or sprint out departments. Sure, they're a little bit slower than the base, but still very reasonable. And an added bonus with this is our range values are improved by 12.5%, and our bullet velocity is also improved by 15%. So overall, this is just an excellent build if you're planning to use it for longer ranges. Next, let's get into my RAM-7 stealth build, and this one's designed more so for like aggressive, stealthy flanking. And with this, for our suppressor, I'm using the Echo Line GSX. And the reason behind this is this gun can afford to lose a little bit of range, and this helps a bit with firing aim stability, which is a nice stat to have. Now, if you don't want any of the downsides, you can just go with that Shadow Strike suppressor that has no downsides, but I found the Echoline GS was nice on this setup. We've got the DR6 hand stop, the Schlager Peckbox 4, which is a non-visible laser, and that one helps with our aim down sight speed a little bit, which I want with this setup because it's designed to be more of an aggressive stealth setup. And then to top that off, we're once again using that HVS 3.4 pad. I really like that attachment for the RAM-7, as well as the Retort 90 grip tape. Now with this particular setup, it's not nearly as accurate as the previous build I shared, so I'm definitely not using this at like longer ranges. However, our recoil plot is still very nicely improved compared to the base recoil. We're not seeing a really extreme zigzag, for instance, so it should hold its own just fine for those close to medium ranges where you're generally going to want to keep yourself with this setup. Our aim down sight time is very nicely improved with this. It's just 211 milliseconds. Our sprint out speed is also very slightly improved, as well as our aim walking speed, and while we do lose 12% to our range, like I said, this is not the type of build we're using at longer ranges anyway, so that's just fine, and this turns out to be a nice, aggressive stealth build. And then finally, I did want to share a Hipfire / tack stance build for you guys. For those that are looking for something just a little bit different, this is definitely not the type of build I'm going to be using on a regular basis. But with this, we have the FSS full stop barrel, the Bruin Bastion angled grip, the Motion tack pad stock, the Haste 15 grip tape, and finally the 40 round mag, because we're going to be spraying and praying a little bit, so having a little extra ammo in the mag is nice to have. And with this, while we do have a slower aim down sight time, that's not as relevant for a build like this. We do get an improved sprint out time. Our hipfire spread is also very nicely improved. And most importantly, our new tack stance is very, very tight compared to the base tack stance with this setup. And while it's still going to have a fair amount of recoil, and you will have to account for that and control that, if you're keeping yourself right up close and personal, or if you're playing on like tiny map playlists, for instance, like Shipment or now Meat, this should be more than accurate enough for you to handle those close quarters engagements. And with that, that's finally going to wrap it up for today's gun guide on the brand new RAM-7. As for my thoughts on this gun, at first I wasn't a big fan of it, especially without attachments. I don't think it's a very solid gun, just because that recoil can be a little difficult to control. However, once you start to build it right, once you build for recoil control, it turns out to be a really solid gun, especially if you understand that you have to mix that headshot in those close quarters engagements in order to get that 4-shot kill. Now, of course, those are just my thoughts on the RAM-7, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about it so far in the comments down below. Also, I did want to point out, I am going to be skipping over the XRK Stalker for now, just so I can get back into the flow of my gun guides. I want to blast through the SMGs and the LMGs, for instance. I will end up getting back to sniper rifles, but that's an entirely different style of gun guide with a totally different template required, and I'm just not set up for that yet, and I'd much rather just get through all of the other gun guides first. So, hope you guys can understand that. If you guys have missed any of the previous episodes of gun guides, I will of course leave a link to the playlist in the description of the video. And if you enjoyed this one, a like rating is always appreciated. And don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.